Hey, how's it going,
Hey,
man?
hey, good, good, good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's weird saying hi after a few minutes on a call,
No, I know it
but
is, but it's for the audience. We have to pretend like we this is the first time talking. They don't know the
yeah,
fact that we spent the last
yeah,
15 minutes making minor recordings and adjusting the audio slightly.
exactly. Yeah, they want to for people out in the world. It has to feel like, and then we just meet. This is how it begins. Already
Yeah,
recording.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. This is just we're starting up. It's all an
Yeah,
illusion.
it is.
We're not even in a room. Whatever you're seeing back there, it's just green screen. But anyway, a big part of the reason I invited you was to talk about D&D and RPGs and various systems that we've done because
What if I just refused? Like every time you start bringing us back to the topic, I'm like, yeah, so, Thailand. They've got a king. That's weird. Anyway,
they do.
yeah,
Now I'm fascinated. Anyway,
that's all I know about it.
but yeah, it's
Speaking of kings, there's a
but
lot of royals and D&D. Fuck, God, I gotta keep steering it back.
it's like I've been interested in like a lot of other RPGs other than D&D because I feel like D&D kind of
Yeah.
dominates, the scene. But it's always so weird because I will play other RPGs and then we'll keep coming back to D&D over and over and over. And it's kind of like the current, it just kind of drifts in that direction. And
Yes.
there was a period of time for a while where I was like, okay, finally, we're gonna play like 10 other RPGs, and it's like we spent a few weeks playing one, and spent a few weeks playing another one, and the players would learn the system, and then be like, okay, let's just go back to D&D, and I'm like, damn it,
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, fifth edition is an apex predator
yeah,
because it uses the primary dice it uses is the coolest looking die available. I think a D20 undeniably just feels good to roll.
it is a
It's got
sexy
like a
beast.
weird, yeah, it feels like a weird fantasy orb. And they got rid of a lot of the stuff in 3.5 that just made it so D&D. I mean, 3.5 was, I think if you want the most D&D edition of D&D, in my head, it's 3.5. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like in my mind's eye.
that is
Because it
how
just,
you know D&D is. It is a
yeah,
crunchy, heavy system with a bunch of
yeah,
books that you combine to make a particular character with a lot of feats.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, fully. But
And
yeah, no,
5e
look,
is technically not that.
no, but I mean, maybe 5e is the. I'm questioning that because the early editions were pretty simple too. I love 5th
Yeah.
edition. It's so good, but it's so good that it makes other games like very difficult to sell to people. If you're playing 3.5 with a group and then you go, let's maybe, I don't know, let's play Vampire the Masquerade. That's like a good pitch. People can kind of go like, oh yeah, let's like jump over to a system that does this other thing really well.
Yep.
3.5, it's not like that.
Yeah, Vampire is like the big one that people recommend. Like if you are going to ask
Yeah.
people like what are your top 10 RPGs, they'll say like, oh, D&D's like number 1 or it's up there. And then you've got like Vampire Call of Cthulhu, Shadowrun. Sometimes I see people like GURPS and Traveler, but I don't think it's as popular. It's on
Yeah.
some it shows up on some lists, so. But yeah,
Yeah.
Vampire is another like big one that people recommend.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, dude. Look, I love the World of Darkness setting. I think it's really cool. Their books are super cool. I used to own a bunch of like clan books for like Nosferatu and one of the other vampire factions. I never owned the base book, and I played some Werewolf the Apocalypse, and I love so many things about that system. I love open die rolls. I love D10s. So I think D10s are rad, and I wish there were more D10 systems because it makes sense, you know. It's like easy to drop into percentages. We work in like, you know, what is it, 10 factor math?
We do 10 factor math. So if you use like D8s or D12s, you get these weird numbers.
Yeah, exactly. I can look at a D10 and I know my, I know the percentages immediately. I don't have to like do any extrapolation.
Yeah, whenever you roll percentiles, that's why it's so convenient to be like, you need a 50%. Like, what's the percent of that? 50.
Oh yeah.
But the problem is that because it's a D100, it goes to 1 to 100. The math for it gets really wonky. Like, add 27 to this roll. It's like, you know. But
for sure.
But yeah, with the with the World of Darkness setting, the one I played quite a bit was Maged the Ascension. I have not played Vampire, but like, and it's a strange one to be very popular because it's so niche. It's a very particular like vampires are quite popular, you know, and stuff like that. But it's urban fantasy, but a very specific urban fantasy kind of a setting. And I'm interested. I think part of the reason I've kind of stayed away from it is I've never been a huge fan of vampires, but maybe I keep looking into it and like, maybe I'm going to run it someday. I got to do it someday.
I think maybe just play it then.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Because you got to be so invested in the different clans and all that stuff. Like, the reason Vampire got popular in Pennsylvania, at least, was they did a lot of LARPing playing Vampire the Masquerade. All over the fucking place. I used to live in Pittsburgh, and in Pittsburgh, there's on Pitt campus, they have this building that I think they call the Cathedral or something like that, and it's this enormous Gothic skyscraper. And so I think it was every Friday night, there would just be a ton of goths that would hang out right around there, and I didn't immediately know what was going on, but I found out later that they were playing Vampire the Masquerade, you know? I mean, they were all carrying around the little white cards, and, you know, they figure out who the Prince of Pittsburgh is and all that stuff. And that was back when there was like a hierarchy of nerds, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where the LARPers were looked down upon by the tabletop RPG players, which is... I felt that way, but I also used to do medieval combat stuff, so I don't know where I thought I fucking... It was like, no, but when we do the skirmishes, there's no role play. It's just combat. Mm-hmm. And then when we role play, it's just at the table. But when you combine both, and you know, I don't know.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, actually, that was funny. I was talking to a friend, someone a while ago, and they told me like, oh, hey, I do LARPing. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And they're like, I don't normally get that response that it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think getting mad about people LARPing is pretty dated. Mm-hmm. I mean, with cosplay coming up the way that it has, and like, you know, LARPers look good now, dude. You like, people just know how to make those outfits and stuff. I think I would love to go.
Plus, I think with cosplay being a lot more like prevalent and a lot more like a lot of people getting into it, I think it's become like easier to explain to people like, oh, I dress up and role play. It's like, okay, if you are not someone who does either of those things, it's very alien, or at least have never seen someone or doesn't have a friend who does it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I used to go with these guys. I think I only went out like once or twice with them to the medieval fair, Renaissance fair. What is that called? Out in Orange County.
I want to say it's the Renaissance Fair. Yeah,
I think it's the Renaissance Fair.
I think we might be thinking of the same one as well, because I do have friends who go up to Orange County to be a part of that.
Yeah, dude, my buddies Jacob and Tex Sparks are like the most intense cosplayer. Like, their stuff looks so fucking good. Jacob just looks like he got like he fell off of a boat from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, nice.
Like, he looks amazing. It's like set quality stuff. And Tack goes hard too, and all of their friends do, and it was so much fun actually. So I don't know why I'm talking about this.
It's a completely different experience when you go to like Renaissance Fair and you're like very not dressed up, or it's like I'm just wearing a hat versus like being like complimented or having a good piece of outfit.
Listen, that was my plan, and then they were like, "No way, we got to stop at." And there's like a costume shop at the opening, and I got kitted out as a medieval peasant, and then got, I think, the drunkest I'd been in about 10 years. It was incredible. I fell asleep on a hay bale.
Nice.
With a big, crazy leather hat. It was awesome.
Awesome.
Anyway, so don't judge cosplay, or I guess LARPing.
Yeah.
It's dated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's becoming more popular. Actually, I've been looking into like mega games, conveniently because of COVID, of course. Yeah, I've been looking into like mega games and how they run. Like I had gotten 2 Rooms and a Boom, and I was like reading through that. And there are other mega games where it's like, oh, you're playing as different countries and trying to coordinate, and they're like 40, 50 people. I don't know why, in God's name, I'm looking at it now that we can't even go to a convention. But there is, in the back of my head, there's this idea of like, one day I'm going to go to a convention, I'm going to run a mega game, and it's going to be great.
Okay. I've never heard of a mega game before. What is that?
So a mega game is a game that has, I think, 20 to 50 people, and it's there's different kinds of mega games. One of the examples that I had gotten, like Werewolf, can be a mega game. You can get like a huge quantity of people and be playing as a village.
Okay.
But then in Mafia, but then there's also one is called 2 Rooms and a Boom, which I'm interested in, but I don't know exactly if I'd like it. In that one, there's a hostage negotiation that's going on where you have the people who are terrorists, and then you have the like CIA or civilians. And there's 2 rooms, and every round they're sending hostages over. And there's different cards that you can use as different objectives, so you can kind of change the rules.
If you're wondering why this video gets demonetized, it's because
this is the reason why. This is the reason why. Yeah, but you're sending people over, and so the it's
Sorry, wait, let me complete the demonetization. Conspiracy, aliens. Okay,
conspiracy. So, like one of the terrorist enemies characters is a bomber, and then the other one is like the president. And so the terrorists are trying to get the bomber and the president in the same room, and the good guys are trying to separate the two, make sure that they're in the opposite. And so they have to talk to people to figure out like who's the bomber, who's the president, who's like the CIA, like who's on your team, who's not, and then sending people back and forth.
Okay, yeah. That sounds interesting. Also, definitely mentioning I didn't even need to say aliens or conspiracy. If you talk about fucking bombers and a president, this video's done.
That's
we can stop it here.
I actually, that is one of the ones I'm like, I don't know if I could run this at a convention with people being with terrorists and stuff like that.
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they did a really cool thing with. My whole entry into nerddom was Legend of the Five Rings card game. Mm-hmm. And they used to do these things in tournaments.
Yeah.
You played it? Which
played
clan?
It. Oh, God damn it. Well, the thing is that it's been so long, and I only played like a game or two that I actually can't remember.
Okay, yeah.
I want to say Crane. I want to say Crane.
Crane?
Yeah. And I have...
Crane...
So I've played the RPG several times, so I know some of the lore. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Red. Okay, yeah. So in conventions, they did this thing. I don't know if they did it more than once or if they only did it once, but where they would have like a table of generals, and then those generals would give directions to the armies, which were played by people playing their clan's armies.
I've heard about this, yeah.
Dude, it's such a cool idea of like, and there would be reports coming back from the tables as to like who is winning what games, and then you would give like commands. And the greatest thing about Legend of the Five Rings was that the lore was based on the tournaments. Mm-hmm. And so the cards would change. And I remember, I think his name was Taka, was just this piece of shit card that everybody used to use for joke builds. Because he was free and he had nothing. He was like free and he had like 0 chi and 1 force or something like that. Like just garbage. And in one competition, he got a hold of some relic, and in the final fight, won this incredible duel for one of the sides, and it was this championship win. And then the next time Taka came out, he had 1 force and 1 chi, or like they just upped his stat by like 1.
Yeah. I have in fact heard stories of these tournament games and stuff like that where they would play the game and then take the lore and then use that lore in writing the storyline. Yeah,
for sure. So, okay, you play a lot of... what is the allure of Call of Cthulhu? Because I haven't played it. I love Lovecraftian horror.
Yeah.
But the system itself seems strange to me.
Yeah, the system itself is not like the best. Like, why? Well, I mean, the rolling system, as in the percentile and stuff, like it's very basic. You know, like the lure of it. So first off, yeah, because it is. We had a conversation with another group of friends where I was like, "Oh, this is Call of Cthulhu." I'm like, "Why would you play this?" And I'm trying to explain it to them, and so that is a common problem. But one of the things is that it takes place in the 1920s, and actually, there's technically in the book there's 3 settings. You have modern day, you have 1920s, and you have 1890s. But almost everyone everyone knows it as the 1920s game. And the reason it gets played in the 1920s is because you kind of have some of the aspects of modern technology that you can use, but not all of them. You don't have a phone. Like, you can't contact people. There's no internet, so you can't look something up. Like, if you don't know what the answer is, you can't just go online and find the answer. And so
for sure,
the 1920s is like... it's kind of close to modern day, so it gives you some of those conveniences, but not all of them. You get like cars and you get guns, but not... and then you have phones, but they aren't as common. And so you can have these stories where it's like you drive out into the middle of the town and they don't own a phone. They only go through mail or something like that. Yeah. Or you're in the forest, and suddenly all these problems are happening and you don't have a way to fix it. And so it kind of helps that like setting. And plus, because you're playing a guy, you have your hit points are like, you have about 8 hit points, and when you get shot it does like a d6 or 2d6 damage, and so it's very easy to just take a gunshot and just instantly die, and it makes the threats like very real because you don't have stuff on your character sheet that can just fix it. But like that's why it's harder to run as like a longer campaign unless your players are like really like enjoying the setting, because usually like you're not supposed to, because there's another aspect is that there's 2 stats. You have physical health and then you have mental health. And whenever your character goes and sees some shit or some weird messed up stuff, your sanity will start going down. And that's how much like mental punishment you can take. And eventually you have to retire the character because your sanity just gets too low. And once you pass certain benchmarks, you actually get permanent things added to your character, like weird tics, or suddenly you're paranoid, or suddenly you have this. And in the book...
is one of them that you have to start writing a journal?
A lot of people do in fact start writing a journal, and it makes logical sense, and that's actually an excuse for why, like, if your character dies or goes insane and retires, and then you hand the journal off to some other character, and then they can continue that like storyline or the mission or whatever you're doing.
That's super cool.
And it even says in the book that below a certain sanity, like the DM does not have to give you correct answers, or like your perception checks don't necessarily, he's not obligated to give you the right answers. So like, let's say you are going around and you're looking around, you have a low sanity. He can just say like, that guy in front of you looks like a monster. Like, he turns around and his face is covered in scars or something. And then you like come to and you realize it's not true. And it is Call of Cthulhu, I think, is a double-edged sword of a setting, because there are some aspects of it that people are really invested. Like, your character is very frail, very real, and it's like very guttural. Like, there's something because you just don't have like there are problems that come up and you don't know how to fix them, and so you got to figure out how to fix them is the first thing. And that's kind of interesting, but like the problem is a lot of people don't like playing frail characters, or it's the 1920s, so it is kind of modern and it's not really fantastical. And the setting is very grim, very dark, because the concept is that you have our world, which is sanity, which is like good. It is goodness. It is hope and stuff like that. And they are the rest of the universe, which is like darkness and hatred and anger and stuff like that. And the gods are basically kind of pushing in slowly. They're just kind of creeping in. And if they ever found out that humanity existed, we'd die. We'd cease to exist.
Yeah.
And it's this concept that we're just slowly kind of trying to push back the inevitable apocalypse that is eventually going to take us.
That's cool. I mean, it's the idea is cool. I like a lot of the ideas there. I think sanity mechanics are tough to implement.
Yeah,
they're a rough one, because it's undeniable that a lot of the games that we play are horror games, including D&D. Like, if you ran a D&D module with the Call of Cthulhu system, it would still basically work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you, because it's like you're going into a dungeon and there's all these skeletons, and the skeletons get up and start attacking you. And then there's someone gets hit with an explosion and suddenly their arm gets ripped off. And
exactly, just run Mines of Phandelver, but with the Call of Cthulhu system, there's no way they'll make it.
One other big aspect of the system that this is either people love it or they hate it is that you, like, whenever something goes down, some crazy stuff, you roll a sanity check, and if you fail, you lose control of your character. Like, your character just checks out. You either start screaming, start running around in panic, you start having a mental attack, a breakdown, you just run away in terror. And so you could, like, my character runs into the building, and then you roll a willpower, and it's like, nope, and you just leave. And that's kind of funny, but it's also like, as a player, you're like, come on, I got this character, I want him to do stuff,
Definitely. For me, I really like it when, and I've done this with XP sometimes, like, if somebody has for instance, if they've got a warlock and their patron is actively against the goals of the group as a whole, I'll give them experience modifiers for sabotaging the group. Okay. You see what I mean? So it's like, if you do the thing where it's like, okay, we'll just put a cherry at the end of this action. Like, you don't have to do it, but if you do it, you're going to get stronger real fast. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like kind of instead of having like punishments, like, okay, you do this thing, your character acts a certain way due to this game mechanic thing, or you lose control of your character, you just kind of like incentivize them doing something else.
Listen, while we're on this, I actually really enjoy when characters in a party aren't necessarily on the same page. Yeah. I think it's really interesting.
Particularly, it was the one which really struck at home was when I played the Curse of Strahd game, and I'm playing as a neutral good cleric, and then one of the other players was a chaotic evil lizard folk, and he's trying to escape. He's trying to get out of here. He wants to kill Strahd. I want to kill Strahd, so we're like technically in agreement, but there would be several instances where he's going to do something and I have to try and persuade him not to because it's the wrong thing. Or he is like, I need his help for something, and I have to explain why he has to do this thing. Like, oh, they're going to kill these innocent people. And he's like, so? I'm like, come on, come on. And sometimes he doesn't help me with stuff, and sometimes I don't help him. And that dynamic between our two characters, because it didn't have the assumption, I didn't go into every situation thinking that, oh, he's got my back. Like, he often did, because he's like, I need you alive. I'm not going to let you get yourself killed because I need you. But he's also like, he's not, if if the group's if you're going out of your way to do something, like that's on you.
For sure. I mean, that's how Skank McGank, the weird redheaded wizard character that sometimes is on the animated spellbook, started, where we had a chaotic neutral and a true neutral character, and then my first character, Johann von Generico, was lawful good, and then when he died, as almost like me stomping my feet, I was like, fuck it, and I went chaotic evil.
Yeah.
And then the entire group balance tipped. Do you know what I mean? Because we had the two neutral characters, and so just by doing that, I pushed the balance over to evil a little bit more, and the entire vector of the party changed. But yeah, there was some tension a lot of times where I was like, I could let these guys die and then keep the loot, but there's no way I'll get out of this dungeon. So I was just lying in wait for almost, I want to say 6 months of that campaign, just waiting for my moment.
Oh, you're sitting every moment you're thinking like, should I betray the group now? Like, no. Later.
I ended up not doing it in the end. I just ended up, I eventually just got sick of that tension, but I loved the tension of having something underneath the surface. And so I played a lawful good character who always sounded like he was lying and was trying to kind of infiltrate the group, but he just always sounded like he was lying about everything.
Okay.
Even his name. Nobody believed him about anything. I just would put these weird fucking pauses.
I know what you're saying. Like, I came from over there.
Yeah.
That place.
Oh yeah, his name was Paylord Boat. And when they met me, I was near a ship. Paylord Boat.
That's great. We there have been some stuff that hasn't worked that we've tried that like I don't know if this worked as well. One example was that one of the players was a serial killer in one of my games. His concept was Dexter, and the concept itself was good. It's fine. It works. The problem is that he would every 2 days he had to like go out and do a killing as part of his thing, because he needed that every 2-3 days. And the problem is we were doing this big overland adventure where it would be like you get on this flying ship and then you leave and you're gone for a week and then you come back and it's like, wait a second, we're gonna have to stop 2 days in, do like a rest. Like, are we gonna fly all that way in 1 week? And then we would have to be like texting each other, or like we'd get up, we'd leave the room and we'd talk, and then we'd come back into the room, and that was like tough to implement. And I was also a little bit worried because the group, like he would kill people that it's like, okay, I'm gonna try and find someone that's evil, like trying to rob someone or someone who looks kind of like a scumbag, but if I can't, I get whoever I can. And sometimes he would have to roll a stealth check to make sure that it happened, and sometimes he'd fuck up the stealth check and there's a witness. And so we'd be going to these towns and we're traveling, and I'm thinking to myself like, man, when we're going to be going back to these towns eventually, and that's going to create a problem. And
for sure,
the other concern is like, I don't know that the rest of the group is actually going to support this guy. Like, if they find out he's a serial killer and that he's been going around murdering people, that he could, like, they're gonna take him to the police. Like, they're not gonna support him. And is that player going to be okay with that? And I kind of felt like maybe he's not. And then the other problem that I had is that, let's say that he's like wanted by the police, and then he lies to the players and says like, oh no, I'm wanted for a crime I didn't commit, it wasn't me. Let's say that it comes out that he's been manipulating the party in order to, like stop the police after him, the player, he's going to get his ass thrown in jail, and the players are going to be like all turn on him. And I actually think the player would not want that. I actually think the player would not have fun doing that. And I was sitting there thinking, like, this is where it's going. Like, this is what it's leading to. And I don't know if he's going to be okay with that storyline, because I think he wants to have this full arc with a serial killer character, and I don't think he's going to get it.
Probably not. I mean, but at the same time, like, every 2 days is a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys can discuss knocking that down to once a month.
In his mind, what he's thinking is like, well, the thing is that as long as he kills someone, so like, let's say they're going along and they fight bandits, he technically gets his kill. And so when he first started playing as Dexter, he's thinking to himself, like, look, we're playing D&D, or we're playing this RPG. Like, we kill people all the time. Like, as long as I kill a thing every 2 days, like, it's not an issue. Yeah. And it just happened to be because I think it's the adventure. If we were playing in Barovia, I don't think it would be a problem. Like, because that, I think...
Yeah, but you guys are playing, like, a political adventure, so it puts a little pressure on it.
Yeah. Well, in our Barovia, I think it was over, like, a week and a half. And so every 3 days, like, I think we killed someone every 3 days. So I think if he had been playing, like, he would have been, fine. This wouldn't have been an issue kind of a thing. But even then, it's like, it's a weird situation, because you don't know going to campaign, like, how often. And I think he was still fine with, like, look, I'm gonna go off and I'm gonna kill, and then I'm gonna come back and then be a part of the group. And his involvement in the group relied on, they cannot find out. And that was where it was an issue, is because I'm like, look, I don't know if I can guarantee that they can't find out. Like, they're gonna find out. You're setting up a house of cards, it's gonna, and you as a player have to be okay with that.
Yeah. I feel like if I was that player, I would definitely have some backup plans about, like, a wizard created a simulacrum of me, and do you know what I mean? You can come up with some weird, convoluted, magical bullshit and just fucking lie straight to the...
Yeah. So that way you can betray the party and get away with it, but still get to keep your character.
Yes. Yeah. Although at the same time, like, what a weird one to try and pull off in a... I mean, it's a fun one, but I feel like if you play those characters that are a little bit off center like that, for me, I just feel like I go into it knowing I'm gonna have to retire the character, but I don't mind that. That's the way that I started playing RPGs. Is like, my characters died all the time. They still do. And when my character's, like, making death saves, I'm excited. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna roll up a new dude. It's gonna be red.
I completely empathize with you, because I have that same shit of, like, the first, like, two characters, it's like, no, they can't die. But now it's like, I see their death as, like, it's the conclusion of that storyline, whatever it is. And
it scratches that itch. It's so much better than the character never getting any conclusion.
Yeah, and it's the great thing about a conclusion is that sometimes a story will be, like, in a stasis, and then when you have that character dies, finally you can, like, move on, or that character can,
for sure,
like, you can reach, like, this is what they did. You can take a look at everything in conclusion. And actually, when I was playing Curse of Strahd in the Barovia game, my character Garo died in the first episode. And then I was like, okay, time to write off Nirvapurdup, and I was making this character Stan Velsing, and then he got resurrected, because there are the dark powers, and it's like, we don't want you to die, blah blah blah. And at first, me as a player is like, okay, this is how we're doing this. He's just coming back. Okay, that's fine. And then but the thing is that I actually, in hindsight, I really, really like that scene. It wasn't until, like, the next episode that I was like, okay, I'm totally fine with this, because at first I'm like, I don't know how I feel, but then several episodes, because he now has this patron that when he goes to sleep will talk to him and be like, this is what we expect from you, and he can't run away from it, because if he dies they'll just bring him back. And so he's now in this weird situation where it's like, fuck, I gotta get these guys. Like, and he actually liked working with them, but the fact that they now have this grip on his life was something where he's like, I don't know if I can like get rid of these people. And if he had just died in the first episode, I never would have gotten that storyline. And so that's why it's like, I'm like, I did kind of like the resurrections and stuff. And it does make me realize, like, I like character death. I really enjoy it. But a lot of times people describe it as like all tension derives from character death. And if you remove that one Jenga block, like the entire thing collapses. And I'm pretty sure I kind of disagree, because I think it's a little bit too, it's not like, there are other things that cause tension in a scene other than just character death,
Oh, for sure. Character death is a good one, though.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a real good one. I think when you diffuse that, it does make combat feel less meaningful. Like, if I can feel that a DM is pulling punches, I start just going off the rails.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
I mean, not in a spiteful way, but I'm just like, no, I want that to be on the table for my character. I want death to be there. So I guess that means that after I got that exhausted status and I used all of my resources, I'm just going to go into the next room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You wanted a certain difficulty. And so your way of like adjusting the difficulty is that you're not being as cautious, or you're not taking these certain preventative steps. Exactly. In the same way that if a DM wants it to be more difficult, they'll throw additional, the goblins show up. You're just like, I'm going to leave this special weapon that has a plus 20 to hit in my bag, and I'm going to use my fists or something.
Yeah, I mean, Elliot, a dude who I grew up playing with, I mention him on my show sometimes. He plays D&D with us on Sundays. He ran a game recently, and his games are so fucking deadly. And I love it. I really do love it. They're a little punishing sometimes, but it's so much fun for me. Because... Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was curious what the numbers were. Do you expect to like lose a character or every session, or?
We managed to survive, but generally by the skin of our teeth. That's what I want. I want to fail 2 death saves. Mm-hmm. That's what I want. I want to be right on the sliver of the edge there. And what's funny is like he raises the tension where it feels like you're always nearly there. Then I played with another buddy of mine, Pete, 2 weeks ago, and he was running. He's running like an old module that he's adapted to 5e, and I nearly fucking died. And I kind of like the game has a lighthearted feel to it, so I wasn't expecting it, even though my wizard has like 14 HP and we're like level 4.
Yeah.
But again, I was excited. I was like, oh, hell yeah. I hope my weird David Lynch wizard dies so that I can play Sir Fauntleroy Appleby, who I already have ready.
I think I actually agree with you there, because it's like the difficulty makes all your actions more meaningful. Because when it's like there's 2 people unconscious and it's like, oh, do I save this person or this person? If you know they're both going to be fine, it's like, okay, I heal whatever, they're going to be fine, and it almost like I've played in some games where it's like very not lethal. And if you're a cleric in that game, you feel like you're more just doing what you are expected to do. Like, okay, I go up to someone and I heal them. But like, if I'm not healing them, they will get healed eventually. They're going to be fine. And tension, I think, is really important. The tension is really important for combat. Although there are different ways to make tension, even if the player they're not necessarily gunning for the characters. Like either the NPCs are trying to kill someone, or they're going to blow up a dam, and you need the dam, or they're going to steal a bunch of items from the player. So you'll be unconscious, or you'll wake up in jail, but all your stuff's gone. So there are certain...
That's so much worse than dying.
Yeah.
Losing all of your shit is so much worse than dying.
I
for
know.
real.
Don't care about the character, but their stuff. My +1 magic weapon.
No, I know, but like if you lose all your shit, that's like because it depends on the campaign, right? Like, I run games where when you die, you restart at level 1. So that puts a lot of tension on when there's death saves to be made because people are like, please, for the love of Christ, could you please just fucking revive me? I know that you want to damage the goblin, but I don't want to lose 3 levels.
Yeah. It's also as far as difficulty. I was playing Arkham Horror, the living card game recently. And
Sure.
Yeah, it's a board game or a card game, and we're kind of playing around with like the difficulty because you can set it to either easy, hard, expert, or Arkham Horror. And at the highest difficulty, you're not doing anything like
except fighting Batman. Sorry, no.
you're trying to. You're trying to open up like a door, and it's like, okay, I do the door. I have a 4, and I need a 2, and I got a -8. Okay, not open the door. Next one. That's -5. Door's not open. All right, pulled it. That's -4. Not open. Okay, I didn't open the door.
Listen, it should be called infomercial difficulty. Just that, like, does this ever happen to you? And it's just like somebody like trying to chop fucking carrots and they can't do it.
Mm-hmm. But
you're just trying to like.
Are you trying to run away from an eldritch abomination? Does it ever happen to you that you get your guts ripped out?
And he's just trying to run away solely on his knees.
Looks like your bag needs more +1s.
Yeah.
For only $5.95, you can get 3 +1s in your Arkham Horror bag.
Yeah.
So you can finally run away. But we found like there's like a Goldilocks difficulty that you're like trying to aim for, where it's like you can complete some stuff, or like they give you these different objectives, and if you can easily complete all the objectives, it's like you're just kind of playing the game, and it's like you're just kind of going through it mundane, like, oh, I pick up the clues, blah blah blah. But if there's a perfect difficulty where you're like you have 3 objectives to complete, and it's like you can only complete 2. Or maybe 1. If you go for the 2, like you could maybe do 3, and that's the perfect, because that's where you actually have to like sit around as a group and go, like, are we gonna let the monster eat this civilian, or are we gonna take the Necronomicon and get out of here? Like, do we want to risk it?
So that's interesting. I mean, I haven't played it, the Arkham game at all. I generally don't play card games that much anymore since starting to play tabletop RPGs. Just because whenever I'm playing a card game, it feels restrictive.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, no, but I want my character to do this. It's like, well, it's not on any of these.
I
on these pieces I don't know of paper.
Have you played like Magic the Gathering?
Well, yeah, I played a few games, and then I went into the card shop to go and get a set, and they were like, don't play this shit eater game, play Legend of the Five Rings. And I was like, okay.
Oh, okay.
And because I thought the card shop guy was cool. When you're younger, because I was like 13 and he was really enthusiastic, and I was like, man, this guy's fucking awesome. He's got the best job in the world. This is the coolest guy ever. I still kind of think that. He had like sort of Matt Colville energy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But anyway, with Arkham Horror, trying to briefly describe the game, is that it's a co-op game where there are a bunch of these different locations and rooms, and you're going around collecting clues, and every investigator has a deck, and you can actually swap out cards, and each decks have different strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that, and there are different things you can do. You can evade, you can gather clues, or you can fight monsters and stuff. And when you go into a mission, there's different objectives that you can try and get. And like, oh, this is the investigative objective. This is this objective. This is you can either try and fight some of these monsters, or you can run away, and blah, blah, blah. And so you play out these different objectives or these different missions and complete various objectives. And there's like an ongoing campaign that you play through where like, okay, there's this doctor and we're trying to save the doctor. But if you don't save the doctor, you lose him. And so you have to remove him from your deck. He's gone.
Okay.
And then if you actually get screwed over, every character has like a weakness. So it's like you draw your weakness and suddenly you have to discard your hand because you have amnesia suddenly or something. And so you have to shuffle amnesia into your deck. And then later on, like other problems will come up and then you have to shuffle more weaknesses into your deck. Where like the character I'm currently playing, what happened is I was on this train job and I got sucked in through this void. And so my character came back. So he now has this weakness because he's been gone where he just like forgets things. And so every time I draw that weakness, I have to discard cards off the top of my deck. And then
that's cool.
There's an item I was using, a magic item called the Crystallizer of Dreams, where it's this powerful item and it lets you do these various things. But there is a Cthulhuoid monster that follows that item. And so whenever you use it, you have to shuffle that monster into your deck. And then if you pull him out, then you have to fight the monster.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That's a cool idea. I like those ideas. I think they're all pretty cool.
Yeah, I really like the game. It's another like kind of hole that you sink into. Like when I got into Magic, like you just buy cards over and over, and it's kind of similar to that because it's like each deck is like a different adventure. And so it's like, ooh, I need like 6 decks. It's like, do you really need 6 decks? It's like, yeah, I kind of do.
Yeah. Well, cards as pieces of little precious, little precious curios are really nice. Like I like them as collectibles, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to resist really well drawn art and like when there's some system crunch under it.
Yeah.
Can be really exciting. But I do find that I just don't end up playing card games, even though I'll pick up the cards and I'm like.
No, I understand because it's like now video games have gotten so advanced, and even like there used to be a period of time where it's like, card games you can only go for this. Like there's a particular strategy, interactivity kind of a thing that you only were gonna get from card games, but now card games have kind of moved online, and it's a lot easier to kind of justify like, we could just play the strategy video game online. And particularly with COVID now and everything, where people are trying to stay away.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're all trying to do whatever we can online. I've been playing tabletop games online for ages, though. I only recently started getting physical groups up and running again. Because it's so easy to organize. It's just like, hey, are you available right now?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is...
At your desk that you're already sitting at?
It's... I've had situations where something comes up and it's like, normally if you're at an in-person thing, it's like you invite people over and it's like, oh, I thought it was Tuesday, or something, and someone's late. And so everyone's sitting around for an hour and you get to like, you get that socialization from people being late or just everyone sitting around in a group. But the problem is that people got to get into their car, you got to drive to your house, and they got to play, and they got to drive back. Whereas if it's, you can reschedule things so easy. If someone forgets, you just remind them and suddenly they hop online. It's so convenient. It's so convenient.
No, I mean, it is. It's insanely convenient. The loss of being on a video call, I find, makes it a little bit better. I find voice only to be tough sometimes, unless you're playing Theater of the Mind. But yeah, no, a video call works for the most part.
But there was a question I was interested in answering you. Like, was there any other RPGs other than 5e that you were like looking at or interested in?
Five Torches Deep is pretty good, and it's pretty it's like a slimmed down version of 5e that has an OD&D vibe, which is really cool. I played a bunch of that with my buddies. And it's got a good vibe. It feels more deadly. It's a lot more trim. Not all of the rules make sense, but they have an abstraction of load that I really like, which is this idea that you use your intelligence modifier to figure out how many things your character planned to bring that you, the player, didn't.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean? Okay.
So you've got the way that they do it is a little different, but the way that we played it was as just quantum materials. So it's like your backpack is full of 4 things that you remembered to put in it, or your character did, but you didn't. And we also tried playing Shadowrun, which will definitely that'll light a spark under me. You know how I feel about Shadowrun.
Yeah,
Shadowrun fifth edition is a trash fire. I'm sorry to the fans of that game. It's a fucking trash fire. They every time I talk to somebody and they try and convince me Shadowrun is simple, I'm like, well, then why is there an entirely separate program that you need just to make characters? And why in the 5th edition manual are the example characters wrong? The people who made the game fucked up the example characters. That's how complicated it is. Because nobody had put together I can't remember what the fuck is it called? That thing that you use to build Shadowrun characters? Anyway, the point is, I feel like in the age of game design, where it's a real profession and like a field and people kind of know about it, you know, you can go to college for it. They're still working with the 90s mentality of game design that has just like, this is how I made it. So when you can summon spirits, how? How? Where is the section on that? Here are the spirit stats. Okay, so I've just got to sift through this whole fucking thing until I find that section that I'll never find again. And also, you guys are going to structure magic and hacking so that it works completely different from guns and and like all of it. Every single thing in that game is like a little weird mini game that doesn't relate to the outside game. And then when something isn't balanced, they just add a new fucking weird rule. Like the way that the stats work in that game is they've got this thing where oh my God, I'm getting so mad and I know that I'm going to get backlash from this.
I
played it.
You can keep going.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to interrupt your rant. You gotta.
No,
you started this
shit.
shit. I gotta finish it.
Listen. I played it. I enjoyed playing it. It's bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like by the measure of enjoying it, I loved the setting. I thought the setting was awesome. I thought a lot of the gear stuff was really cool. And I thought a lot of the mechanics were cool in a vacuum, but they didn't really fit together. Again, I'm really talking about Shadowrun 5th edition. I've heard some of the other editions are better, but the one that I had the misfortune of learning was 5th. And so the way that the way that attributes work in Shadowrun is that you have these attributes. I can't even remember the names of them, but it's like, just imagine it's like strength, reaction, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever they are. And depending on how much you have in that stat, I think that's like how many dice you roll, how many D6s, and then however many of those roll a 4 or higher is how many successes you have, and you have like a target of how many successes you need to do things or whatever. But the problem is, and then gear also will add to that pool, but because that was kind of broken, I guess what they would do is then do this fucking thing where you couldn't roll more dice than the average of 3 of your other stats. It was this fucking insane. Every time I would start reading that manual, I would just be like, why? I mean, you're making up all the numbers. It's not that we're trying to like, anyway.
Yeah, so I remember I had first tried to get into Shadowrun, and my original thought is like, oh, we're going to play a one-shot, like teach the group. And the second I started reading, I'm like, oh, this is not something you can teach someone in like 15 minutes, and in 20 you're playing the game. And then in addition, the problem is that they had multiple different sets of rules for combat of like, this is how hacking works, this is how spirits work, this is how magic works, this is how gunslinging works, this is how, and they're all separate. You know, they're all separate rules.
Well, listen, they're all separate, and while all of that's happening, you're also figuring out I love their initiative system. That's the one thing from that game that I thought was really cool. But the initiative system does have a lot of weird shit in it where like your initiative will get knocked back, or you'll only get like one simple action but not one complex action if a bomb goes off and you use a reaction to dive out of the way. Like there would be all of these weird there were too many instances in that system of like, this is how it works, but, and I don't need to hear that every time.
Yeah.
It's fine sometimes, but it can't be every fucking mechanic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that one I've read through a bit and then just been like, okay, this is not it. But it's also like, it is, if you play that system, you have to commit to it. You know, like that is the system you're going to be playing for the next year. And everyone has to get up to speed on it.
For sure. I mean, I've played a few games of it that were really, really fun. But I think it's the setting that's fun, and it's also the deadliness of some of the stuff. Like the immediacy of what a grenade does in Shadowrun is deeply satisfying to a D&D player who's used to just like beating the crap out of something for half an hour, to just like have a well-planned attack where a drone just goes boop, and tosses a grenade through a window and the fight's over. Yeah. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Yeah. Sorry. Now I'm all riled up now.
I remember there was a few systems that I played, and it's like the group just like no, or just they were just either sometimes they were interested in the setting but not the mechanics of the system, and then other times they were interested in like, oh, that sounds interesting, but like the theme is terrible, and they just don't like it.
Yeah.
It was actually, I know this is going to be surprising, but I cannot sell my group on like Dungeon World or the Apocalypse engine stuff, because it is a role-playing system. Like it has role-playing mechanics, and my players hate role-playing systems. Like systems that say like, okay, this is how your character would act. It's like, don't tell me how my character would act. I can act how, you know, well, you're not going to get this XP reward or something. And I think it's interesting. I think it's fascinating. I have not played that, but I know my players, and I know it's a very beloved system in a set. But I think like every time I've tried to point it out to them, they're just like, look, I don't want to, like, oh, you can select these archetypes of characters, and it's like, look, I don't want to play as an archetype. I just want to play who I want to play, you know, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I want to play a barbarian, 3rd level gnome, and that's all I want. And you can't give me that in whatever this other thing is. It's like, well, I could craft it for you. No, it's not D&D.
Yeah.
Shut your dirty mouth.
Oh, there was 2 games that the players that they just kind of like quit out on, or actually there's a few games the players just kind of quit out on. They're like, no. One was Traveler, because we were rolling through their character creation system. And I've kind of talked about this. I don't know if you're as familiar with it. I'll explain it to the audience, where your character is on a life path system where you start at 18, or maybe it's 16, and then you keep rolling, and it's like 20 years or 4 years of your life. Like you go through this phase, you're in the military, then you do this, then you do this, and then you do this. And you actually get skills based on what your profession is, and you move between different professions and stuff. But it's, you have to roll to qualify, and you roll to see what you do. And you roll to see if there's like mishaps. And so you could have these horrible things happen to your character where you get conscripted and you end up in the military, and then you get stranded on a planet for like 4 years. And your original character was to be an engineer, you know, or something. Yeah. And so you don't get to decide what your character is, basically. And so the players
that's cool.
were not they like made characters, and they're like, look, I wouldn't be interested in playing this character that is like deaf in one ear because an explosion went off by his head and then got, you know, stranded on a planet. And then there was another game.
They're just like, I'm already not interested in playing the person I am playing in day-to-day life.
Yeah. But it's a very...
I don't want to do this again. This luck of the draw bullshit. Fucking, I want control of my destiny. That's what this is about.
Yeah. And I think but it's a very mundane setting. You know, it's a very boring setting. I remember showing it to them, and they're like, look, because it's like it's considered one of the premier like star or space games, and most people want to play either Star Trek or Star Trek or Star Trek or Star Wars or something related to that. But they want that like fantasy sci-fi kind of a thing. It's not as many of my friends are interested in that like more, oh, you're trading and going around and getting money and like economics and politics and stuff. Like they're not as fascinated as that. But so there's two other games that players quit out on. Those
must be really hard to run though. That must be a nightmare to run and make it interesting. Like how do you get that to work?
I don't know, honestly. It is kind of a beloved RPG, so I imagine that there are people who are quite good at running it. I think that probably you'd start with the economics, that even though economics is a big part of that game, they might ignore that aspect. Like, there's this whole trading section of the rules. We're going to ignore that, and it's a space opera kind of a thing. Or the other aspect is it might be you start with trading, but then it grows on to bigger and better things afterwards, maybe. But yeah, it does sound... I don't know that it'd be the most interesting game. We'll see. But
listen, the more mundane games can be really interesting, but you need a group that trusts you, and it also makes it so that you can do some really interesting things if stuff does get weird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think I ran one game a while back where it was all mundane, and it was a homebrew system, and the weird kind of fantasy elements that were in the game really stood out and worked because the game had an underlying sense of reality. But I think it can be really tough to keep people's attention though.
Yeah.
You've got to be so good at it.
I've tried to do more like slice of life stuff, and it just it's all the players got to be down for that kind of a thing, because fighting is something almost everyone's interested in, but not everyone's interested in like going to school and studying, or they're fine with that being like, oh, we spend 15 minutes talking about what we do with our downtime days, but I don't want it to be like a 3-hour session is just role playing through that. And I've played in some games actually where it was very slice of life, where you spend like 2 months and you have no combat for that entire, and this is D&D. And that's like, for me, I'm sitting there like, okay, I ate breakfast. I don't need to tell you what I ate for breakfast. It's like,
let's talk about it.
No, let's talk about what you ate for breakfast. And it's like,
the juice from the suckling pig rolls down Abaddon's elbow and pools on the floor. Your eyes are getting heavy.
It was 3-hour sessions we'd play like that. It's too much. I'm tapping out.
That's tough.
But
that's real tough.
There was people are going to be messaging me about this, so I have to explain. The two other RPGs that I played that players quit out on, one was Open Legend and the other was GURPS.
GURPS is tough. There's just a lot. There's a lot in GURPS.
I think that's the best way to describe GURPS there's a lot.
There's a lot. It's a lot.
It's not one. You can't just set it on the table and be like, make a GURPS character. Because otherwise the players are going to like spend an afternoon trying to make characters and go be super confused.
Oh yeah. Listen, the king of that was Big Eyes, Small Mouth.
Oh yeah, we talked about this. Yeah, because I played that as well. I haven't played it, but I have looked at it, and I was interested in running it for a while, so I did study the system.
Sure. Look, Big Eyes, Small Mouth, I have a love for it because at heart, I love like anime and stuff.
Yeah.
which I don't know, probably shouldn't be a revelation. Like, I'm an animator. I like
Anime.
beautifully done animation. Yeah. But it is character creation, the game. It is wild. You can drill so deep on what you want to play in that game, and they give you every conceivable option that you can end up with these insane characters where you're like, I'm a high school student who is an expert gunsmith, and I own my own robot dog, and my robot dog is actually my father because his soul is in an urn in the robot dog's chest. And for that reason, I've had to become emotionally tough. And so my spirit is strong. Like, there's all these, you just keep going, like, yeah.
It was, and also, just to explain partly for the audience, is GURPS stands for Generic Universal Role-Playing System. And it's basically, it has a plethora of these different options that you can select for your character. And BSM is like a smaller section of powers that you can do.
Wait.
I think.
Did you say? Oh yeah, you said it right.
Oh, what?
It has an unfortunate shortened acronym. It's
big
very
eyes, small
close
mouth.
to another.
Yeah.
Big eyes, small mouth.
And anyway, then you have the you have all these powers and abilities that you can select, but in Besm, that's what we're calling it, big eye, small mouth, you can sometimes you can even modify the powers where it's like, oh, I have this damage ability that I throw out, but you can modify the range or the effect, or be like, oh, it keeps going for several rounds and stuff. And it just and then in addition, you can pick up these weaknesses that I think give you like negative numbers, and you can like increase those. And so you can have this rival that gives you all these XP because it's like super high negative, but the rival is like a demigod.
Yeah, you can have exactly. You can have a rival. And then one of my favorites was ageism, because it's a real easy one. It's just like, oh, you're too young or you're too old for people to take you seriously. Mm-hmm. So you're better at everything.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, because you would get you get bonuses for all of the defects that you chose, or faults. I can't remember what they were called.
All right, I got to ask: have you played, or because you said you played it, correct, or did you?
I played Big Eyes Small Mouth.
Yeah, have you played that one?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I have just read it. I haven't actually played it, so I'm curious what characters players made. Because when I played GURPS, when I was trying to get into GURPS, we had one player who was going to make Doctor Strange, and he gave up after a day because he's like, I'm going to stat out all of Doctor Strange's spells. And then he came back like a day later, like, this is impossible. And then there was another player who wanted to play as a speedster, and he actually mismade his character, where he just gave himself ranks in move speed. He didn't have a high dex. He didn't have good initiative. He couldn't do extra actions. He couldn't do any of the speedster stuff that you'd expect him to do.
He just could move real fast.
His move speed was just high. He didn't have any defense.
The mailman. Yeah.
That was, but anyway.
Yeah, just fucking Amazon Express.
So
that's great.
So what characters were made for that one?
Okay, so I ran it once and I played it once. The time that I ran it, there was one guy who played like I think in the game the term is like Bishonen or whatever, like a pretty boy who's like
Bishonen or something like that.
Who's obsessed with his looks and like had a totally like just perfect mean features. And I think his inciting incident was that he got slashed on the face by somebody, and so he was on a vengeance. But he got so many points for being a narcissist because we just layered it all the way down. Like, he had phobias of anything happening to his appearance. He had a rival. He had the narcissism trait. So he was so fucking overpowered. And then there was another guy who played like a mechanic, like a mech mechanic or something like that. And I just remember in practice that he was just not there for anything important that happened, just by happenstance. So the entire campaign, he would like leave the room and then some crazy bullshit would go down. And then he would come back in the room and be like, what the fuck happened in here? And there'd be like one PC dead and then like an alien split in half and like the engine is like leaking fluid and he'd be like, what the hell? And then you'd have to go and, repair stuff. And he ended up, if I remember correctly, he wasn't involved in almost every major incident until a cascade of critical failures killed the entire team. Which I believe were the mechanic, because they were in a spaceship, and then he had to do some kind of simple repair. Something went wrong. I think he was like, maybe he was holding like a replacement, generator or something like that, and then he fell down the steps, and then it hit the ground and exploded and fucking killed everybody. But it was a series of roles where we were awestruck. You know what I mean? Just like more ones than you've ever seen, and we were like, "What the hell is this?" And so that was the end of that campaign. And then the next one I played we had to make high school students, and we were limited to not having any of the supernatural powers. And
that changes things.
The guy who was running the game hadn't really read the manual as thoroughly as me, because I had already run like a 2 or 3 month game in it. And I was young. And so I donutted the whole thing. I just found every loophole. And I remember there was no character concept. It was just like, how many attacks can I juice out of this 20-point character? And it was insane. He would do like 6 attacks in a turn or some dumb thing. And the DM only really figured out about it when he launched us into our first combat, thinking like, oh, I'm going to do like low-level combats because they had to create high school students. And I just fucking fucking dunked on this monster. And he was like, oh my God. And I was like, yeah, I'm bad at everything else, but I can hit things over and over and over again real hard. Yeah, so those were my 2 BESM experiences.
So yeah, because it's always the reason I ask is because I always know with any kind of these do anything systems, you always get the craziest character concepts. You get some really interesting shit coming out of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done a few do anything or kind of systems before, and the character concepts that I've seen is Full Metal Alchemist, Luke Cage, Spider-Man. That was one group, and then I had another group where it was Mercy from Overwatch, a Moogle, a gunslinging Moogle.
That's real fun.
Someone who is like a mind controller. Like basically her shtick was that she would like charm people and was like could extract memories from people, dominate people. And then the other group that I ran, it was like who was it? It was Nick Fury was one of the players, and then there was a powerful telekinesis, max telekinesis. You can just throw whatever the fuck you want, kind of a thing. And then Venom from Spider-Man or something like that.
Okay,
like,
that's fine.
You get the weirdest concepts.
Yeah.
But there was someone I knew who wanted to make Taskmaster from Spider-Man, or sorry, Taskmaster I think is just. He's from many different things. He's a common villain. But anyway, his shtick is that he can look at people and copy their fighting style. And and he tried to stat it out, and we realized like you can't stat. It's hard to stat out because it's like some weird copy power that goes into your fighting or something like that increases your defense. Whatever. It was strange.
No, it didn't work. Yeah. No, I mean, I think the craziest do anything system we used to make all of our own systems, and had one that we called the Star of David system, or the Star of David system and the fractal system, because it was a 6-pointed star, and on each of the points there was a stat, and then that would break down into another 6-pointed star that would be specialties within that stat.
Oh,
and
okay,
then that would break into another star. And so it was a fractal. You could go as deep as you wanted to make your character highly specialized in one thing. And
that's interesting.
If I remember correctly, there was like one guy made like this like cool anime guy, with a big sword and a chain hook, and he was a sailor or something. And then another dude saw I think another dude just made like a can. It was a sentient can that could only cast one spell. And it was so good at that one spell. It would like blow ships in half. And we're like, oh, this system doesn't work. Like when he made that, I was like, oh, this is definitely not a functional RPG system. It was a fun spiritual practice to sort of figure out how we would do this, a fun mental exercise, but this can is a god.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's because I think for me, I've realized like I actually I like the do anything systems are great for like getting weird character concepts. Like they're not as fun to run because it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Like it's just like,
they're not fun to play.
Yeah. And I don't know why it's been such an issue. I think part of it is because those do anything systems don't have as many like game mechanics. Like there's nothing that's coming on and off cooldown. There's no like strategy of like, oh, I have this thing to take them down. You either have the thing that deals with them or you don't, or something. Usually you can just blow through. But that's
because there's no room for game mechanics. You know what I mean? Like it's too complicated to balance all your monsters against everything that could be coming at them. So you're just like, I don't know. It's got
hit
these
points
stats.
And an AC. That's it.
Yeah. It's got an AC, and this is how much damage it does. Beyond that, there's not a lot we can plan for because you guys have like telekinesis and shit. I mean,
yeah.
No, for sure, dude. I'm trying to think like, but those are the two major ones.
Probably we'll do like 10 more minutes and then we'll kind of wrap it up there.
Oh, sure, dude. Like, No. I mean, listen, I'm deeply invested in this conversation.
I know.
I'm enjoying myself.
I'm having a blast. I'm deeply invested, but I'm like, okay, we got to keep it to like 2 hours or something. I'm probably going to end it out.
You know what we should do, dude? Just delete the first hour.
Yeah. Because I do want to delete the first.
Honestly, part. I feel like we were just kind of like getting into the
funk of it. Yeah, the rhythm of it. Yeah. Because we didn't really know
not in it yet.
We didn't really know what we were going to talk about. We're just like, I assume I assume we could get an hour and a half worth of content. We just start talking.
I assume that eventually a conversation will appear. But I'm actually I'm interested in your origin story.
Okay.
I don't know if you've talked about it much on your channel.
I don't think I have. Origin story, are you talking about for the Puffin Forest YouTube channel, or are you talking about me RPGing in general?
I think about you being a writer. That was a big surprise to me.
Oh, that.
I mean, because you've written like books and shit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll give a little bit of background. When I was in high school, I used to write a little bit, but like nothing ever. Like I'd show it to a friend, or like I'd give it to like 5 friends, and like 4 of them are like, yeah, I read like 2 pages in. It's pretty good. And then there would be one friend who it's like, oh, I've read the first chapter. I'm like, thanks, but they weren't really interested in that. And then when I was in college, I actually took off some time because I was like, I'm gonna be a writer. This is what I'm gonna do. And so I would. What I would do is I would write about 1,500 words each day, and a novel is about 80,000 words or so. So if you do the math, or actually let's say 2,000 words to be even. So you're doing 2,000 words a day, which I think comes out to like 8 pages, 10 pages or something like that. And so you start writing for 40 days and then you complete the rough draft. And then there's an editing phase that you go through. But anyway, I can basically make a novel in about 2 months that is like still very rough. You know, it's still like it's gone through some editing, it's gone through a few passes and stuff like that. But I took like a year off and I was writing like 4 or 5 novels. I was just doing it every like 2 months, was just writing. And it helped me get like a good workflow of like, you get up, you work, and you got a plan, like this is the work that I'm going to do over this period of time. And I even would like make up these like sheets that were like, I did 1,800 words today, I did 2,400 words today, I did 3,000 words this day, and I did this thing, so that I could see it like growing. Because if you don't have any sense of progress, it just feels like this that I'm bashing my head against a wall over and over. But at least if I can see like the word count growing up, then I can like have I can get an estimate of like it's going to be done in 2 weeks or something like that. I got 2 more weeks to work on this stuff. But anyway, eventually you just like, I got tired of it, you know, after like a year and a half, 2 years of writing regularly. I just got to the point where I was just like, the problem is it's so solitary. Like I'm in my room for 20 hours a day, because it's like I would sleep in my room and I'd get up and go to my desk and work. And then
it's funny that you moved on to animation, which is exactly that solitary.
Yeah. At least I have...
It's the same thing.
I moved my workstation out so that way it's more like in kind of near the living room, so that way it's like I'm not in the same room, but it's like it is very similar, where I'm like I'm in my bed and I go to the workstation and I go back to bed, and I go to the workstation and I go back to bed, and that is the cycle. You know, kind of a thing. But it's also like, at least when I'm animating and doing YouTube stuff, like I'm socializing with people online, I'm talking to people. The problem is that if I'm just like, it's something about, when you make art and you want it to go out to the world, you want it to like people to watch and people to enjoy it. And it felt like I was a cook that would cook up the scrumptious dinner and then throw it away. Yeah. I'd cook up, and maybe it wasn't even scrumptious. Maybe I was like, I'm just going to make 500 PB&J sandwiches because that's easy. Because I was writing because it's easy for me. But I realized like I wouldn't read my own content because like I was not part of like the reading world. Like I would write, but I wouldn't read that much. And so I was like, this is not the kind of content I would consume. And it's like, what do you do? Like, what do you watch? Like, oh, I watch, podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff. And it's like, get on YouTube, like make YouTube content. And that was, and the entire pitch for my channel was like, I want to make content that I would watch. So it's like, I want to watch funny videos on YouTube that are about Dungeons and Dragons. So I make funny videos on YouTube that are about Dungeons and Dragons. That's my entire pitch.
Totally, yeah. No, listen, the same thing happened to me, actually. I was making a wizard, and I couldn't figure out the rules. And then I went to YouTube to see if there was any help, and there wasn't. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, what the fuck? Why aren't there guides to this stuff? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a class guide series. And then I started doing a guide for Barbarian, thinking that would be simple. And I was like, this is fucked. This is going to take forever if I animate it.
Yeah.
And then I revised it, and I was like, maybe I'll do Wizard for some reason. But I was like, no, I could just do spells. Okay, well, I'll start with the spell book so that they can understand what to put the spells in. And I already had a little bit of juice, but honestly, the reason I ended up doing it is just because I was frustrated that there was nobody doing it. Which we talked about a little bit before the call, that I thought it's kind of funny that are you the same? Do you get D&D rules questions?
Yeah, actually, so I get a few, but not as much as you. Like, there will once every like 2 months. No, actually, every like 3 months. Sometimes people will ask me like, "Hey, I have this character, like I stuffed my character into a cannonball, or as a cannonball into a cannon, and I shot myself out of a cannon, and I punched a stone giant in the face. Like, how much damage do you think it'd be? My DM thinks it should be 2d6. I argue it should be 2d6 plus 1. What do you say? Like, sometimes I'm...
Okay, wait. So in this case, with that specific question, for me, I would want to know how many feet they went. And then I would just use the fall damage rules on them and the and the ogre or whatever. But no, I mean it's a funny thing. So that I was actively having problems with the rules, and now I get rules questions.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think it's also
like, I have the same resources as you. I'm just looking at the player's handbook. In fact, I make a concerted effort not to look at any of the supplemental materials because it makes it harder for me to have a cohesive vision of what this system is. Because if you include all the Xanathar stuff and all of the elemental evil stuff and all of the Volo stuff and all of the optional rules from the DMG, it just turns into this like crazy sprawling thing that's actually hard to talk about.
That's actually an interesting point that you bring up, which is that if you're just talking about the PHB, you can look at it and say, like, these are the rules. But the problem is, once you start bringing in the supplemental material, it suddenly gets really, like, you almost can't talk about it anymore because there's too much stuff going on or too much, like, variance or something. I got into that trouble a little bit because I was talking about the rules in Call of Cthulhu. And the problem is, what are the rules of Call of Cthulhu? Because I was just opening up the book and reading from it. But you could have homebrew rules, and people are like, "Isn't that Call of Cthulhu? Are you saying my homebrew rules are not a part of Call of, any less valuable?" It's like, look, I don't have access to your.
Wait, no. Rewind.
What
is that a real thing that somebody got mad about? Is that something very specifically Call of Cthulhu that everybody homebrews rules, or
no, it's not anything specific about Call of Cthulhu. It's just the fact, and but it has to do with phrasing of, like, if you say like, oh, there's how many classes are there in D&D? It's kind of a trick question because part of me wants to say 12. But what is in D&D? Because D&D can be defined as the player's handbook, or it can be defined as all these other supplemental materials plus,
I would just say the only way to answer that question, as far as I'm concerned, is to say there are this many in the player's handbook.
So
and then you're defended. You can't. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot more, but there's this many in the. I'm not saying that I will never do stuff. I sometimes will do stuff outside of the PHP, but it's harder to talk about for sure.
Where it is actually, the Call of Cthulhu one is actually based on a legitimate issue which came up, which was I was talking about how Call of Cthulhu, the combat is very brutal. Like, you get a bullet and you get shot, and I said, like, oh, they can't really run Indiana Jones in Call of Cthulhu because Nazis have guns and they shoot people. So you could never have that scene where it's like there's 8 Nazis and they're all firing and Indiana Jones is like escaping. Because if he gets tagged by a bullet, he's dead. He got shot, And I tried to run it and that was a problem. And a lot of people were writing to me because there's a book called Pulp Cthulhu. And in Pulp Cthulhu, it is basically a high action version of Call of Cthulhu. And so I open it up, and I open up to the combat section, because I was aware that this existed, but it's like, when I said Call of Cthulhu, I'm thinking the PHP, or the core rulebook. I'm not talking about the supplemental stuff. But, like, I open it up, and in the combat section, it basically says, we're throwing out all the combat section stuff, or all the health and the dying and the hit points and stuff in the base rulebook. And we have this own system that we've generated. And and the reason why they had to do that is because, once again, you can't use the base Call of Cthulhu to run that kind of thing, because if you get shot, you're dead. And so it's this weird, it enters into this weird conversation now, because, like, when I say Call of Cthulhu, what am I talking about? Am I talking about everything that is Lovecraftian, or am I talking about the core rulebook? Because I could open it up and be like, there's no, like, rocket launchers in Call of Cthulhu. It's like, well, there's this supplemental rocket launchers handbook,
Yeah, exactly. No. I mean, it's tough with that sort of stuff. There is an Indiana Jones game.
I believe it. Yeah, I have not seen it though.
No, I remember I when I was younger, I spent my last money on it when I was like 14 or 15. I made a lot of bank one year working as a carny. Or I guess you're not a full carny unless you like travel with them. When I was working with them, I was, candying nuts, doing the, little doughboys fudge.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I derailed. You were talking about something, and then I was talking about, you were talking about how, you were talking about your videos and how it was like you were talking about the spells. I'm trying to remember. Or people were asking you questions.
Listen. I derailed you. You were talking about writing, and then you talked about YouTube briefly, and then I talked about my fucking self for a minute. But I do get rules questions. I'm not the best source. I think it's better to ask old J. Craw.
Yeah, Jeremy Crawford. Because I have read through his Twitter, and there are some tweets where it's like sometimes he gets the weirdest tweets at him for like people mad for like weird reasons, where it's like, why is your rulebook forcing me to make these decisions? It's like, I'm not forcing you to do anything. It's like, why? Or he'll get like a message which is like, why can't wizards cast spells in D&D 5e? And it's like, well, actually, it says right here they can cast spells. It's like, I meant metaphorically. They basically can't cast spells or something like that. Like, it's because what'll happen is someone will say, they'll complain about something, but it's like, and then Jeremy Crawford will point out like the problem, but then it turns out that their rule that they were complaining about was like a homebrew rule or something like that, or they didn't know what they didn't read the rule themselves, or they have this like really esoteric question. It's.
For sure. I mean, listen, I think that at this point, listen, I don't know him yet. I want to meet Jeremy Crawford. But I think he would agree with me that they need to just come up with a list of spells that can be twinned. Just a fucking list. It needs to be an appendix of the goddamn rules. Because a lot of spells can be twinned that really shouldn't be able to be twinned, and a lot, like with the current description, and a lot of spells that should be able to be twinned, like Firebolt, which I fucked up. I thought you could twin Firebolt. Nope, because you could also hit an object with it.
Oh, interesting.
But come on. That doesn't make it broken. The fact that you can throw 2 D8 firebolts at a stool and a mummy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like meanwhile, it's totally fine to twin haste, which is the most broken shit in all of D&D.
The question I remember in our group there's a few things that were like, okay, this is kind of weird. One is this has changed between different groups, is that whole like bonus action spell, because some people like casting like, I cast a bonus action, but then I cast Fireball, and you're like, not technically. I know some groups like it and some groups hate it. And then there's another thing where whenever it says like, like a shield bash as a bonus action, you have to make an attack first, and then the shield bash comes last. And it has to come after it. And I remember everyone who plays a fighter always wants a shield bash first. And I allow it because I think it's fine. Because they want to knock him prone and then stab him.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
But technically it has to come at the end. It's like, you do this stuff, and then as a bonus action you do this other stuff.
And it depends on the wording, right? Maybe I would look at the wording, because the wording might be, if you attack as an action, you can use a bonus action on that turn. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's phrased a certain way, by doing the shield bash, you guarantee that you have to attack.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I get so into the weeds with the rules, dude, and at the end of the day, when I'm playing, I mean, I don't play that way. I don't think anybody. Well, no, I know a few people who play that way, but and I'm sure that their tables run really smoothly if there's an entire table of people who play that way. But it can be really obnoxious if there's just one guy who plays that way and nobody else does. Mm-hmm. Ooh.
So my question is, you said that you got a lot of questions from people. Were there any that you can think of that you got that were like, that is weird, I didn't think about that, like, that's a weird situation?
Mostly the ones that surprise me are the ones where people point out why I'm wrong and they're correct.
Okay.
Those are the ones that where I'm like, oh yeah, fuck. Yeah, I guess you're right. Like the Firebolt one. Or I get corrected on stuff that is from errata, and that drives me nuts. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. When a sage advice ruling changes the fundamental nature of the first printing of the PHB, that drives me nuts. Or a big one that surprised me was they changed clone, and they didn't talk about it. They changed the clone spell in one of the later printings, and the later printing makes it so that you can only cast it on certain sized creatures.
Okay, got it.
So you can only cast it, I think, on medium creatures, which means that gnomes can't clone themselves anymore. I don't know who made that decision, but it changed in between me doing something on the clone spell and then them changing it. If you go to like D&D Beyond, they've got the more updated rules, and then that's what it says there. But if you go to like Roll20's clone articles, it's got the old version of it. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, I'm trying to think of like a really good question somebody asked me. I mean, it's mostly just people pointing out weird rules, things I didn't know about. That's the thing that always surprises me.
Actually, the most common thing that I actually get sent, I don't get rules questions as much. People send me their stories quite a bit from their games. And sometimes they're sending it to me because it's like, oh, you told me a story, so I'm going to tell you a story. Or it's like, oh, I got into D&D, and this is what happened. And they had their first D&D experience, and they want to share it with me. And those are pretty fun. But on occasion, on occasion, people will write to me to tell me a story because they want the story to kind of show up in a video. And they're like, oh, I give you permission to like use it. I'm like, look, I don't even talk about like 1% or 2% of the stuff that show up. Or I only talk about a tiny fraction that show up. And besides, it's like when someone tells me a story, I cannot creatively like edit it in terms of like, oh, I'm going to leave this stuff out. Or sometimes they're not giving me the details that I think would be like interesting. So it just depends. But I appreciate the stories when I get sent them.
Oh yeah. I mean, I mostly read the stories on the, if they're on the, like, there's like a Patreon communication channel in my Discord, because my general Discord is big enough that I can't. I see some stuff on there sometimes, but I mean, the story channel on there is just fucking like all day. So it's kind of hard to keep up with it. But every now and then somebody will tell me about something where my favorite is when something that was in a spell book showed up in one of their games. I've gotten a lot of responses on how to make D&D feel more witchery, where I put together kind of a guideline on how to make monsters a little bit more dangerous, but also have weak points and feel like they've got cool lore around them. And so people will tell me about that stuff, and that's pretty cool. But I'm trying to think. The thing I like probably the most is when like you get professional art from people. That shit is the best.
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, it's so cool. Fan art and stuff. Yeah.
It's incredible. When somebody drew Skank better than I draw Skank, and I was like, this is badass. It's such a scary photo too, or scary painting too. I was like, oh my god, I guess that is actually what he looks like. He is a terrifying little goblin man.
Yeah. I have a section on my computer which is just fan artwork, all caps, and then exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. And whenever someone sends me something, I always save it and say like, I got it on this date from this person on Twitter, Facebook, or something.
Oh yeah. That's cool. That's super cool. I don't have that because there's not that much of it. Yeah. I get probably about one maybe a month.
Okay.
My guess though, you've got a lot more cultural penetration.
Mm-hmm.
So people go crazy for your shit.
Oh,
they
thanks.
love it.
Yeah, I do get messages on occasion of absurds showing up in people's games, and sometimes Wallace's. Sometimes statues to Wallace.
Yeah, dude. People love your stuff. For a long time, my friends here in South Africa thought you and I were the same guy. And
I often get credited for the animated spell book. And
you do?
I just say thanks, appreciate it, have a good day. That's great.
You son of a bitch. That's super fucking
it's particularly
funny.
Like if someone goes to like, they just kind of click through videos on YouTube, and you know how it's like it just kind of intermingles the videos. Like, oh, I animated D&D content, and so sometimes it mixes all the content kind of together.
Dude, that's hilarious. Yeah, I've definitely people have called me Puffin a few times. Because I went to search for my channel on Google one day, and I went like Z bash, and I got to the S, and then it was Z bashu space face, and I was like, that's weird. So then I just pressed enter, and then I looked at the image selections that came up, and yours was the first face that came up, I think.
I don't even show up on camera that much. I'm like.
Not anymore. That was like 6 months ago or something before, or more than that, probably about 8 months ago. And I was like, not ever on camera, but
when I first started YouTubing, like I type in the weirdest stuff, and it would take me to like different channels and stuff like that, because it's like Google doesn't know, so it's like, I think this is his face. Prep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm trying. It's probably corrected now.
Yeah,
but that was a fun period. But we got so far off the beaten track. Okay, so you were writing books.
Yeah.
And then how many did you write in the end?
So it's difficult exactly to say, because the first 5 were like actually edited.
That's so many.
And
that's so many when you're like, it's hard to say how many books I wrote.
It's just like you're bored out of your goddamn mind, and you got nothing to fucking do, and you're taking time off from school, and so you just have a day. And so what you do is you sit down, you write like, 15 pages, and then you go to bed, and you wake up, and you write another 15 pages because you're bored, and you got nothing to do. And I wasn't in RPGs at the time, and I'd gotten out of video games for a bit, and so I was just like, I'm just bored, and you're broke, so you're right, and that's all you do all day. That's the thing that you do.
But what the hell is the word for that now? Hustler?
Just someone who just works a lot or something like that.
Yeah. You work hard.
So it's.
But I mean, because most people who want to be a writer, they don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They just talk about how they want to be a writer, and then they never do anything about it.
But it's honestly, I mean, the problem is I'd like write the book, and then I'd be like, oh, I should probably try and sell it. And then like I'd issued out some queries, and I wouldn't get any responses. And I'm like, oh, that one was probably trash. And then like, how you get to the end of a work, and then you're like, I hate this work. It's done. You just want to be done with it. And so I'd move on to the next one. And so
dude,
I'd like get to it and try and sell it, and I wouldn't be able to sell it. And then I'd go to another thing and try and sell that one, and then go to the next thing. And then there were like, so I wrote the first 5, and then there was like a few later on that I like half wrote and then skipped to the next one. And it's just, I lost steam. I got like bored. And then I kind of was out of having a hobby for a while where I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I got into writing the RPG replays. And then I transferred to writing them online or making the videos and then animating the videos. And then that's where the D&D story thing like came from. And actually writing a novel is kind of comparable to making the animated videos. It's like making 2 animated videos because I'll spend like 3 weeks making a video. Like a 13 or 14 minute video, and that's 2 of them back to back. That's 6 weeks. That's a novel, or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you spend about 2 or 3 weeks making a video.
Yeah. The time always has fluctuated so much. When I first got into it, when I was pulling like the 80-hour week of just you get up and you animate from like morning to evening, was like I could pump one out in like a week, but I just fucking died. Like that killed me. It's too much. It's too much.
Well, listen, when I was doing that, I noticed my views started to go down. Right? When I was doing one a week, I was like, what the fuck? I thought this is what you're like supposed to do.
Unfortunately for me, they went up, and that was when it was like the bad positive reinforcement. That was when it was but actually when I was pulling, so there was a period where I was pulling the 80-hour work weeks where I was getting like 10 views on a video, or something. And I spent a year doing that where I was just getting nothing, but I could see the content was getting better and stuff. And then I eventually released the Why Won't My Character Die? And that's the video that got like 200,000 on a weekend. I was like, where have you people been? Like, But then after that video, that's when it started going up, and that's when I continued the 80-hour work weeks. And then after the first year, I was just like, this is too much. And actually, since I've slowed down, the views have they kind of plateaued and then started going up again. It's very like, because you can see like there's still a steady growth of people because you're getting compounded. But for me, it was kind of a linear thing of like the more work I did, the more I got. Because so for you were saying they went down because were people just getting like sick of too much content, or was YouTube like, we're not gonna share it or something?
Look, I think that
any conversation about YouTube, you're like, I think this is the reason YouTube doesn't or does or doesn't. It's always just such a crap.
No, I mean, I have a theory, which is just that people. I think that the animated spellbook is tough to make, and so it's a little bit of a. It works as a commodity because it has a. I'm not saying that other YouTube stuff isn't tough to make, like it is, but the animation in the animated spellbook is pretty labor intensive.
Yeah.
And so I think that if it comes out every week, people just adjust to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it comes out once every like 2 or 3 weeks, people are like, oh, an animated spellbook. And then they click on it.
Yeah.
But if it comes out every week, it's just like part of the things you see in your timeline. You're like, oh yeah, there's another one. I'll watch that later, and then you forget.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
it loses its like specialness.
Now what happens is like the entire audience sees every video.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like whereas the other, when it started coming out, like also when I was machine gunning them out, I think that there was a level of people can sense how enthusiastic you feel.
Yeah.
I think, you know what I mean? Like there was a level of enthusiasm that just wasn't there on a few of those episodes because I was just like so fucking tired, dude. I was just destroyed.
There's a huge difference between when you're working on a video and like, I'm going to make this video the best that can be, or maybe not the 100%, but it's like, I'm going to make it like 80% or 90% versus what is the minimum amount of work that I have to do to release this that people will watch?
Like, exactly. Yeah. Is this a video? If that's the question you're asking, is this a video? Probably it's not. But then some of those videos did fucking incredibly. Yeah. And a few videos that I've spent tons of time on have just eaten shit. Like the The Witcher video I did ate shit. It did so bad. And I really was like excited. I was like, man, the animation is just rad. Witcher series just came out. I finally have an excuse to talk about The Witcher. And then that video just fucking ate its own nuts. Like it was fucking gone.
I think my version of that was, I remember I think it was like Too Many Betrayals, and the opposite was like, okay, I just need to make this. I need to finish it and get it out. And then people really liked that video.
Yeah.
And then I remember the Absurd video I had made was just like a regular one. Like, okay, I'm just going to release it. And that one did really well.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think. I definitely know that there have been a lot of videos that I put a lot of effort into that just don't do as well. I kind of want to say the Wallace one. That one I put a lot of there's a lot of dialogue and stuff. And then that one did decent, but it didn't do like as amazing as some of the other ones, if I recall.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always such a crapshoot.
Do you watch much D&D content now?
Online stuff. I don't watch that many like streams. Like sometimes I'll click on a video, or Matt Colville. I like his stuff, like conversations. I like people talking about their content. Like I like it when they're just kind of directly talking to the camera and about content, or discussing like rules or stuff like that. But it's also like there's a part of me that's like, oh, they're starting to get like so much D&D content, and like I have to start like triaging of like who I can watch, who I stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I mean you can exist a little bit too much in that world for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean the Colville is so good, and he also does a lot of other stuff which I love.
Yeah.
Like him talking about Dune is really interesting.
He also did a Legend of the Five Rings video, which is why I knew about
he did
thing.
it. Yeah, dude. And the WebDM guys are fucking awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know if I've met them a few times online, and they're fucking just rad guys too.
Yeah. I've met them in person. They went to the D&D like live event. I said hi.
Oh yeah. That was like towards the end of people being able to gather in spaces.
Yeah, what an alien concept, being in the same room with people.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's wild though. I guess let's not get into that. Into what the Game Grumps call the Backstreets reunion tour. Because they're scared of demonetization. But yeah, dude, no, let's not get into the nightmare that is the real world right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so yeah, WebDM is really good. Who in our like little animated knot has been up to some cool stuff lately?
Joe Cat. I really like Joe Cat's stuff and his music and stuff like that.
Joe Cat is just out here fucking killing it.
I know.
Every time there's something about, and he also just has like a natural funniness and dryness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I'm very like I'm blown away by anytime I talk to that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's kicking ass. Aiden is just I wanted to say grinding again, but killing it out there.
Yeah.
What's a word for that? I need a new word. I guess grinding's still fine.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Aiden's out there. He's grinding.
The internet will let us know if it is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, dude, that dude has only been animating for like a couple years, like maybe 2 or 3 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He is so good. I thought he had like formal training.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any sense that he's that good that fast.
Yeah, his work's
he's young
incredible.
too.
Yeah.
A youngster. Out here in these mean streets.
Yeah, it is crazy
grinding
how
every day.
how much the D&D community has kind of grown up and gotten large, because we always talk about how it kind of didn't really exist like 5 years it was a lot smaller. And
no, it's blown the fuck up. It's crazy. There's so much stuff. And the other thing is, there's something about it that inspires people to make art. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or make some sort of excuse to talk about it endlessly. I mean, that's the thing that's funny is, like, I think that people don't realize how insufferable having these conversations with us in real life would be.
I agree with you. Like, in IRL, I talk about D&D, RPGs, and YouTubing like all the goddamn time.
Exactly.
To the extent of...
But me too. But that's what I mean is, like, I want to talk about D&D, and the videos are like that drill at the end of Memento.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Or not Memento, Pi. Where you're just releasing the pressure on your brain.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Where it's like all the facts,
just
details. Yeah.
I cannot have this knowledge anymore.
I spent all this time looking up esoteric rules for D&D.
Exactly.
I need to vent to someone.
You know you're getting deep into it when you get into those supplements. Man, I'm starting to dig into some of those, like, third-party supplements. That shit is crazy. And a lot of it's really good.
Okay. I have a somewhat side note, which is that I got my old notes because there was a Black Crystals campaign that was playing, and I got my old notes from it because I was thinking about playing in it, and there was someone else that I know who's a friend who does meticulous notes. Like, she will write 2 pages worth of notes for every session that we play. Be like, we're at this scene. Yeah. I got this item. And normally what happens is I'm just writing about my own character, like what I get. But she writes what other people get. His character did this. This character is doing that. And so you can actually look through the notes and be like, oh, I see exactly what we did. But I got those notes, and so I'm reading through them. And the big startling realization that I had was that I played D&D so differently back then than I do now. Like, it's completely different play style. Because there's 2 major differences. One is that I was a griefer. Like, I would do stuff to fuck over the rest of the party because my character was like a dumbass or something. And it would be like, okay, group, we're decided we're going to go left. I'm like, I go right. And I, like, run down that way.
Okay.
And I definitely, when I was doing the RPG replays, like, I definitely know there was some audience that did not like Gouda because her character was kind of like happy-go-lucky and stuff like that, but she didn't sabotage the party. Aligaros actively went out of his way to sabotage the party, where, like, there's a bunch of guards that go in and it's like, we're looking for Katya, and I say, oh, are you looking for Katya? And then it's like, wait, I wasn't supposed to say that, like, kind of a thing. And the second major thing that I realized that was a huge difference is that I would not know what's going on in a scene. Like, I wouldn't know how magic would work because I'm just playing as a fighter. So a wizard would cast a spell, and I have no goddamn clue what spells that she's casting, but she says these spells are supposed to work, so they work, I guess. Whereas nowadays I would, like, look at someone would like, blah, 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 there's something coming out of his mouth. And nowadays I look at the cleric, I'm like, this is a curse, obviously, so you got to cast remove curse on this character because that is the problem. Whereas, or there would be, we're fighting a guy and suddenly this crown shows up and the crown has these thorns on it.
But then listen, there's some real magic to or pardon the pun, some real magic to those first sessions where you don't really know what's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And where you're not like, that's a crown of madness. He's got to, hit him. He's got to make a concentration check or whatever.
Yeah. And it's there. And actually, if I were to play them back to back, the old Ben was like, oh no, there's a crown on someone. I'm trying to rip the crown off physically. I'm like, you got to get it off of him or something. And then new Ben would be like, what an asshole. This guy has tentacles coming out of him. He could have made 5 attacks, but he's wasting his action to cast a crown on the wizard. He only gets Crown of Madness only gives you one reaction and attack. It's a melee attack. It's a wizard. He can only do a D4. Besides, we just gotta punch this one enemy once, and then he has a drop.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
What an idiot,
Yeah.
you know? And and so
that's tough. That's hilarious, though.
But it's
what a
also,
terrible use of that spell, though.
I know.
Was it on a wizard?
So yeah, it was on a wizard, but it was also what happened is that the we were fighting against this like monster, and he's from the Deacon, he's this dark thing, and so the DM cast Crown of, and the DM doesn't exactly know what all the spells do, so he's like, oh, Crown of Madness, that sounds like it's a cool spell, so he casts it, and then as he's casting it, he's like reading through the spell and stuff like that, and this is what it does, and it's like, at the time, it's like super scary. It's like this big intimidating thing. Like, oh my God, what's going on? He's controlling her. He's taking over his mind. Like, is she ever going to become free? Like, maybe we've lost this character and we're never going to have this character back. You know, maybe she's gone maybe the second level spell has permanently destroyed this character and she's going to have this thing in her brain.
I have to say, I've seen that spell do some serious damage. Baba Lysaga, or as apparently everybody calls her, Bob Lasagna, independently. Do they call her Bob Lasagna in your game?
No, it's Baba Lysaga.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've heard a few other people in our group because they kept forgetting the name and they just called her Bob Lasagna. But she nearly took out a significant portion of the party with that Crown of Thorns spell.
Yeah, it's a
good.
really good spell, but there's something about seeing the spell and not knowing what it does, having that mystique, that like mystery, and thinking like, oh, is this like permanent? But then when you've been playing for a while, it's like, oh, it's a second level spell, so he's probably concentration, and we're just gonna have to disrupt the concentration, and then it'll be gone.
But that's where those supplements come into play, right?
Yeah.
Then you can get some like, you know, legendary dragons or some great legendary dragons. By the way, is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who makes it. It's like Jetpack or something. Oh, this is probably making a really annoying noise. Jetpack 7 or something like that. I can't remember who makes it, but look up Legendary Dragons. It's fucking rad. And all it is just write-ups on all of these different dragons and stat blocks for them. And they're nuts. Like, all of them are really cool. You can build an entire campaign around basically every one of them. And the way that they do it is really fun. Because it's like interesting and lore and really good art and a little stat block. Something I can't stand in supplements is when there's just a wall of lore. And you're like, oh God.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
What fucking fake kingdom had a war with what other fake kingdom how many fake years ago? Jesus.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, I understand why we need it. I can't absorb it out of a book. I need somebody to say it. That's why I love,
it needs context.
Yeah. But I love it when people talk them out. Like, Jordan, spelled Jorfden.
Oh yeah,
I think is the guy who does like all the stuff you don't know about elves or. I'm trying to remember who does
because I know
that.
Mr. Rex does that as well. Things you don't know or what they don't tell you about XYZ.
Yeah, Mr. Rex. His stuff is really cool. Jordan also does some lore videos or something. I'm trying to remember because I know I watch a bunch of his stuff, but which means that I am doing the same thing. I just did the same thing that people do to you and me all the time with two very dissimilar creators.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But anyway, yeah, and so it's like it has. I play the game very differently because it's also like even I'll fight a monster and it'll be like, oh, this is a Tiberax, and if you are someone who is a DM for a while, you know, like Tiberax is not in the monster manual. Because it's like, if you are a DM, you have gone through the monster manual so many times that you have a rough idea of every single monster manual, and can very conclusively be like, that's not in Volos or Mordenkainen's. So like immediately being able to know, like, hear a monster and know that's you just made that one up, or something like not.
Well,
and maybe they're okay with it,
the
but
ones, I'm okay. I love a monster I've never heard of before. That makes me excited because I'm like, ooh, what homebrew bullshit am I about to encounter? Am I gonna have to make exhaustion saves? Is it gonna do stat damage? That's one of my favorites. Stat damage is one of the best, funniest things in D&D that I wish more stuff still did.
Okay.
Just fucking 1d4 strength. Jesus.
Oh, that, yeah. I wish there was like an easy, like elegant way to use it, because every time I'm interested in doing it, I'm like, this is gonna be hard to implement. But I think with con it's a bit easier. But sometimes it's like I always worry that players will not. Well, actually, I think specters do it. Like they do strength damage.
Shadows do strength damage or something, I think.
I always confuse those.
Some of the monsters do some really fucked up shit. If you like really dig down and take a look at any of the CR4 and above monsters, it's like a lot of them do shit where you're like, oh my god. If you actually plan out this encounter in a way where this thing has the upper ground at the beginning of the encounter, the players are fucked.
There was one fight where they went to the abyss and they're fighting a Sybarex, and it cast 2 feeble minds, one on the druid and one on the warlock, and they made their saves. One of them failed. There was blah, blah, blah. They fixed it. And they kept going. And then it wasn't until later on they realized, like, Ben, that was pretty fucked up, because they didn't realize it at the time, but there was only one character that has greater restoration to fix it, and that's the druid.
Yeah.
And so the save's like an 18 or something, or like, I forget exactly what the save is, but if you fail it, you can't cast spells for a month. And then I specifically targeted those 2 people because they're the only people that can plane shift. So they go to the abyss, and if Asiago, our druid, had not made her save, they would be permanently trapped in the abyss with a character who is feeble mind, basically.
Oh wow, that's brutal. That's really, really brutal. My absolute favorite monster ever is the second edition, or the AD&D Piercer.
Okay.
Have you seen them?
I have not seen that monster, so
Listen,
you're going to have to describe it to me.
It is one of the maybe you can even put it up on screen when I mention this, but let me see if I can find the...
So, I have... I'm sorry, you must have accidentally sent me a stalagmite instead.
It's just a stalagmite with a fucking eye. Back when D&D monsters didn't have to make sense.
It's coming from the ceiling. God damn it.
It waits its whole goddamn life for some adventurer to walk underneath it, and then it gets one shot.
I think they actually have that in 5e. I think I've seen that. I think it's Pierce. I think
see, the thing is, in 5e they tried to make them make sense, right?
Yeah.
They weren't just a fucking stalagmite with a cartoon eye. They were that when the Monster Manual guy ran out of ideas. They in 5e they're like a weird slug thing. They're a little bit like the thing in Half-Life, right? Where it like waits on the top, but they do the same thing where they drop down and try and attack you, and then they have little creepy legs that they can use to crawl back up to the top.
Yeah.
But they're the best, and I still use them to this day, and they make me so happy when they work, because you give the players tons of opportunities to notice that they're there. Where do you look? Straight ahead? Down? Okay. And then if it's up, it's like, oh, you notice some stalagmites up there. Give me an insight or a perception check. And I don't even want that much. I just want like a 12. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But invariably they fail that, and it is on, baby. It's on like Donkey Kong. As soon as they fucking.
Isn't it just a rock? It's you don't understand, Ben.
It's an actively maligned rock. Yeah.
It's an evil rock.
Yeah, a malignant evil. Yes.
There's going to be an enemy, a villain that's just a Lego block.
Yeah.
That like just sits there, and you just step on it, and then it just like somehow goes in through your foot.
Yeah, it's precisely that. Yeah. Like a like a hookworm that's disguised as a Lego block. This is what you might call a fell creature. Okay, that's not.
Okay, I am actually going to be having to wrap up this call around now.
Sure. That's a great way to wrap it up. Is on a totally failed pun.
All right. Thank you for coming in. Thank you, Zee, for being with me here today.
Thanks, man.
But anyway, also, did you have anything else that you wanted to like advertise or like anything in particular? This is Zee animated spellbook.
Oh yeah, I'm Zee. I make the animated spellbook. Not Ben.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's me.
He makes Puffin Forest.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He to my this or which way are you for me?
You are
that way.
You're yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay,
that is correct.
Yeah, he makes Puffin Forest, and you should check it out. You're already on his channel. I don't know why you haven't seen his animated work. It's very good.
It's like you're in a restaurant, and it's like, oh, you should eat at this restaurant, which you're currently in.
Or like when your cable channel advertises itself on cable. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, that's fair, you know. Catch Absurd tonight at 6.
Watch it at that very specific time. That very specific video. But anyway, thank you. All right, goodbye.
Thanks. Goodbye, world.
Yeah, goodbye.
Possibly not. Okay, bye.